Hello.
Hello, hello. How are you this Wednesday?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I am good, but I am blown away. It is the last Wednesday of March.
It really is. I
Oh my,
was just thinking that April 1st is right around the corner.
I'm not ready. The first quarter is almost gone.
Doesn't matter if you're ready or not, it's coming.
Leaving me in the dust today for sure. Oh my
Yep.
goodness. And how's your week been so far?
It's been good. Finally acclimated to the time change. So as of today, I'm ready. It only took like more than a week this time.
I think our pets acclimated a lot faster than
Oh,
I
yes,
did
they
on that.
did. That's true.
And like, no, no, it really is feeding time. Yeah, I'm serious. I'm convinced it's
Yep.
feeding time.
Yep.
Yeah, they get with that program pretty quickly.
For
Oh my
sure.
goodness. Speaking of getting with things, our topic today, just on SEO optimization, is one of those things that I have not gotten with. And I'll be
Mhm.
quite honest that has kept going to the bottom of my list. And probably mostly because it can be overwhelming.
Right.
And a lot of people are just not comfortable understanding, like,
Mhm.
all of these different components and, how can I kind of simplify this so that I can improve my ranking on the search engines, especially
Mhm.
Google, right?
Mhm.
So I'm really glad we're having this conversation today and maybe, sharing these tips and making it a little bit more comfortable for
Right.
people to
Yeah.
go in and really take a look and evaluate. So I think, just sharing some of the optimization tactics like the keyword search, the on page optimization,
Mhm.
backlinks. That was one word that was like, ah.
Yeah.
And
And
it's probably not as scary as I think it is.
mm,
So I'm going to rely on a lot of your expertise because I know you help companies do this all the time in your role.
mhm.
Yeah, so I think we've got a lot of great stuff
Mhm.
from our notes that we've shared that will really help set the stage for our viewers. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to get started.
And I'm
What
glad we're talking about these items too, because it's funny with SEO, like we do some SEO and we do things that affect SEO, but we also work with partners who are much higher level depending on the needs. But I kind of stopped saying SEO for a while ago because it was a bit of a buzzword and nobody really understood the challenges of it, and it's not something you fully control. To be honest, Google is going to control it, and Google changes. So at the end of the day, it's something you can adapt to and plan for, but it's not something like, I know there's other things that make just much more logical. So anyway, I'm glad we're talking about this, but it's always about what can you affect and what can you improve. And with marketing and sales in general, I always think it's incremental things that increase whatever, right? The likelihood that you're seen, the likelihood that you'll convert. So incremental changes and improvements make this whole pie of marketing success. So
Yes,
that's how I see it.
I guess it's you can't have a one and done kind of mentality
Right.
approaching anything really in
Mm-hmm.
today's world, but especially when it comes to search engine optimization. And
Right.
one of the things I was reading was that Google processes 40,000 searches per second,
Wow. That's a lot.
across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge, right? So it is important to understand the game
Mm-hmm.
and be able to
Yep.
optimize that, right?
Yes.
For our own monetary purposes
Mm-hmm.
and visibility, right?
For
So
sure.
I think it is timely for us to have this conversation at the end of Q1.
Cool. So we ready to dive in, I guess?
I think so. Why don't you kick us off with tip number one?
Okay, yeah, let's just talk about some tips for keyword research. Like, where do you start and what do you go for? Because I think that's the piece where it used to be. I mean, here's the thing that people don't always understand is that if a competitor to you is doing aggressive work in SEO for the same keyword you are constantly competing against them. So a lot of times you have to look at the competitive nature of whatever it is you're looking for. So, I mean, some simple things like if you think of, pizza store, right, or something, right? Just
Yes.
imagine how hard it is to do that if you are smaller than Pizza Hut or Domino's. Like, just it's interesting when you think about it, and especially when you look at B2B and other solutions, like on a national level, you're competing with all of these people. So local has its own nuances, but generally speaking, a lot of businesses will work with, people, in any market. So really you have to think about that. And so what you want to do is think about your niche and your persona. So we've talked about this before. Always know who you're talking to and who you're talking to, and then what you are offering. Like who are, what's the target. So the more you can think about that, the more I can think about, let's say for marketing, you know, marketing solutions for technology companies. So that sounds, very detailed, right? But there's traffic for it, right? And so there's a few ways. So there's tools like SEM Rush, and there's other tools out there where you can look up words, you can find the search volume, and then you can find other related words to it. So that's a great practice you want to do regardless. What's going to happen is, in addition to that, the volume, right? You're going to see how competitive it is. And that's
Mhm.
key. So, what you want to do in any search tool is you want to look for keywords, you want to get a pretty big list, and then you want to find the ones that are least competitive, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're starting a website, you're not going to rank right away for on first page for much of anything that's major. But the more I can get specific search terms, so let's say just 20 searches a month or 50 searches a month for this, it may not sound like a lot, but if it's the person I want, it is a lot.
Yeah.
So
Huge.
that's when you start looking at not just the site, the content on your site, but what kind of blog content might you create. So then I might think, okay, if maybe marketing, maybe marketing services or marketing tools or marketing agency, or I just start looking at variations. And you can also go straight to Google, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you do a search in Google, and at the bottom, you know how it suggests other search terms,
Yeah. Yeah.
longer ones, sometimes more detailed. That's what you can help to start your list. So you want to get an Excel document. You want to kind of start building this list and start thinking about these terms. You can bucket them together, because then once you do this research, that's when you start looking at, okay, what am I going to write? What am I going to link to within the site? How long is the content? I know a lot of people who look for search results based on what they're going after. And then you look in the search results on the first page, you see great articles, you see one that has a video in it, you see one that's, short or long. So you start looking at the top results. Is it old? Do you think you can beat them? Like, you really have to get nitty gritty with some of this. So as you look at a search result, look at the results. And if you see current content, 2,400 words, really, really, lots of video, lots of rich information, you probably should find somewhere else to start, because you're going to have to build to that. And so that's where you have to look at competitive nature, like what's going on, look at your volume, but then also look at what's happening. If you see something that's old, not very long, that's ranking top, look at it and say, you know what? I'm going to write twice as long of an article. I'm going to get a video on there of me talking about something. I'm going to do this, this, and this. I think I can beat them. Like, that's the granular level I suggest targeting for keyword research.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is so fascinating to me
Mm-hmm.
that, and It makes sense because if you don't
Right.
feel that you're going to be able to outrank them,
Yep.
why go through that process of beating yourself up every day,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Either be satisfied being on page 2,
Mhm.
or page 3, or, go the different tactic
Mhm.
and really try to create through different keywords
Yep.
the same kind of effect that can get you on page 1, but
Mhm.
um, just using a different way of getting there,
Yep.
right? But
Yep.
still appealing to that audience because
Mhm.
that's where it all has to rest. That's the
Yep.
foundation, right? What's the content that they're looking for.
Mhm. And if you think about it, you get one thing that's working, even if you're talking page 2 or 3, you're showing progress, right? It's going to happen
Yeah.
over time. Maybe that's working. Then you can write another article, do the same process, but then you can go back and link from that first article that's ranking. So you really
Mhm.
have to think about it as a very organic, which it is, process of how do this sort of spider of connections and things like that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
that is really interesting.
Yeah, so
Cool.
that's that, and we're gonna put some comments in, afterwards, that some tools will link to SEMrush and some other tools that people might want to use. But so do you want to take us to tip number 2? Would you like?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So, this was something that, you know, um, I think one of the things that we hear a lot is on-page SEO, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And, what really impacts that overall experience. And,
Right.
I think one of the things is the if we just take a look and continue on this journey of focusing on the user experience,
Mhm.
right? Looking at that website structure, right?
Right.
And then considering it both from a user experience and a search engine
Mhm.
experience, right? So
Mhm.
I think my approach was user experience.
Right.
And, that's where I went because that's where I was most comfortable.
Mhm.
So looking at going back and evaluating your title page, your title page or your page title rather,
Mhm.
and then making sure that you've got the the meta tags set up
Mhm.
properly for that, right?
Yep. Those descriptions and
And
things like
making
that.
sure
Yep.
that um, those descriptions of those titles include those keywords that you're
Mhm.
going to be using, that you have, determined from, tip 1, right? That are going to be on your top list to optimize. And, that's then the website structure is good to help take the user on the journey, but then
Mhm.
it also really helps with the search engine page crawling, where
Mhm.
the search engine really is trying to learn about you,
Yes.
about what you're all about, what
Mhm.
content you're delivering, so it can rank and categorize, right?
Mhm.
For all of those search engine results that they're 40,000 every second. Um, and then I think, the navigation of the website. So really take a look at how you're linking between the pages, how you're delivering the top nav structure,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
And don't overcomplicate. You
Yes.
don't really have to put everything up there,
Right.
especially if you have a lot to offer.
Mhm.
You can, concentrate on what's most important to
Yeah.
drive conversions, right?
Yeah, like, think about folder structures and things like that, like how you can go from simple to more, specific content. So, you remind me, you ever seen a website where they're trying to be very clever with their titles in the navigation? And I think that's a bad idea until you get to a certain level of, visibility or prominence, because you don't, yeah, I mean, instead of like team or staff page or whatever, it's like our fun, or like it's just something you're like,
Yes.
what? Like, yeah.
It's like,
So
what is
that
this?
kind of stuff is, I just think it's dangerous early on. So.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because if we're thinking, "What does this mean?" then I'm sure
Mhm.
the search engine is as well,
Mhm.
right? And
Mhm.
could possibly, ping you
Mhm.
for, for not being that clear,
Right.
unless you've got really good, meta tags behind it. And it
Mhm.
goes the same for images and video that you're placing on the website as
Mhm.
well, is to make
Mhm.
sure that you're, properly describing those elements,
Yeah.
so that that can get picked up in the search engine
Mhm.
crawls as well.
Yeah.
And then page speed. And
Mhm.
this is something
Comes up a
that,
lot.
as I was thinking about it, have you ever been searching for something and you click on the link
Mhm.
and it starts to load, you get the 404 error,
Mhm.
or it loads halfway and then it
Mhm.
just stops. And I know 10 times out of 10, I'm out of there.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I'm not gonna, I'm not going to spend my time waiting
Mhm.
for the page to load, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I think you're out of there, and you're also, you don't, your trust is sort of like wavering. You're like,
yeah.
something wrong here. Is it a virus site? Like, you all of a sudden
Yes.
that's broken. So I totally agree. That's where, yeah, I've seen a lot of reports where it's like, that's a problem, because that goes back to, I think we talked about this earlier, like Google wants to get people where they want to go, right? That's Google's principle. If Google doesn't succeed in that, Google's not trying to rig the system necessarily for certain things, but if we won't use Google if it doesn't work. And so they want us to get to something that we actually need. So
Mhm,
it all
mhm.
builds on that, I think. So.
And you need to think about, what all you're putting onto the website that
Mhm.
may impact, that page speed,
Right.
and also that users are,
Mhm.
the audience that you're serving is coming
Mhm.
from, you know, the laptop, the
Mhm.
desktop,
Yeah.
the mobile, device mostly. I would
Yeah.
say, like 95% is probably coming from mobile, if not more.
Mhm.
And how is that impacting, that overall user experience with the page speed?
Yeah.
And, we've also talked about making sure that you keep your content current on the website, in
Mhm.
other sessions that we've done. And so, as you're updating it, test the page speed again,
Mhm.
it's not a one and done kind of thing. You've got to,
Mhm.
like, be cognizant of it. And then the mobile friendliness. I remember
Mhm.
my previous company that I had started was, uh, had chosen a platform that presented the visual experience that I wanted it to have,
Mhm.
and their mobile experience was horrendous.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I was like, "This is not gonna serve me well," you
Yeah.
know? And
Not for long anyway, right?
you really have to look at that. And I know sometimes when you're first getting started in business, money is a priority.
Mhm.
And, you want to take something that, maybe you can build on your own without
Mhm.
having to have a web designer or something like that,
Right.
So
Mhm.
you go for one of those sites,
Mhm.
but really, really make sure that if they're like showing you anybody that's currently using them,
Mhm.
look at that person's site on mobile,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
really understand that before you sign on for that year.
Mhm.
'Cause
Absolutely.
it makes a huge difference, and
Mhm.
I was overly frustrated
Yeah.
trying to get it to cooperate for me on mobile and
Yeah,
look
that's
as pretty
frustrating.
as it did on my laptop,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah. And speaking of tools, back to tools, there's Google Analytics and then Google Search Console are both tools that once you have tracking code on your site, you can see who got there via mobile versus desktop. So you can actually see how people are using it, and then you can actually see do people on mobile spend less time? They may, just by default, might make sense, but are there other problems associated with that? So once you look, there are other tools to actually look at that and learn as you're going. So
That's a great point. Yeah.
mm-hmm.
And there's an ongoing debate over the keyword density,
Mm-hmm.
and Google is actually rewarding, I guess, in the ranking system, the content
Mm-hmm.
over keyword density,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
where maybe 10 years ago, really
Yeah.
having the same keyword,
Mm-hmm.
just splattered all over
Yes,
the
true.
website, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
For lack of a more technical term. Um, I think that, you really have to change your tactics with the
Mm-hmm.
times and with what Google is
Yes.
telling you,
And that's why I still, when somebody's not, putting a lot of money into SEO, I always tell them you should go as pure to, the sort of intention of search, like quality, and like just the most quality you can give, because Google will continue to change to like strike out anybody who's gaming the system. So if you do
Mhm.
that, you better be like constantly putting money into SEO or working with a firm that's ahead of the schedule. Otherwise, once you get dinged by Google, you might not recover. So, it's important to, if you, especially, as we talk about small business and things you can do now, work on quality content and focus on the blogs, like really focus on really quality. How can you help one person that you're targeting?
Yep.
Because you don't, like, if you're finding a cheat, like you said, like it used to be something you could just shove keywords in there constantly, and then when Google changes their algorithm, you suddenly you drop, right, and then
Yeah.
you have to recover, and that's just not a good place to be.
No, no, and it may take you a while to even realize it if you're not
Right.
staying up with your analytics, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you're not
Yeah.
really looking at those reports when they come
Yeah.
into your
Sales
inbox.
slows down. It's a month later when you realize why leads in the site have changed. Like, yeah, it's and that's even more damage that's being done every day.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So, and I think what, last point for me on tip 2 is, I've heard that Google is actually looking at, mobile first indexing
mhm. Yeah.
as the priority for
Hmm.
them. So again, with that whole mobile experience, it can really make or break,
Yeah.
the traffic flow.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm curious about that too, because I believe that's true. I think that's how they're looking at things. And I think maybe it makes sense because you're going to, speed and different things are important on mobile and much more concise, not a lot of pop-ups and things like that. So it makes sense. But I do have clients who desktop is their primary source. I mean, it's just either their B2B space. Most things happen during the workday from businesses. So
Mhm.
um, I guess it just makes sense that they're focusing on mobile first as the best optimized experience, even when it translates to desktop. So I guess if you build for mobile and it's good on desktop, you kind of have the best of all worlds. So
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah, good point. So, what's our final tip for the day?
So the final tip is just a little bit about backlink strategies, and this is kind of some warnings and some opportunities. So, earning backlinks organically can be quite challenging. Some people pay for links. You just have to be cautious with that type of plan and very particular. So the thing is that if someone links to you, that you think of your domain authority, right? And this is old school as far as the process, but your domain authority, let's say it's at 20, Forbes is at a 80. If Forbes were to link to you, that would be huge. That is like a high authority person saying, I trust this place. So that's the the gist of it. So when you think about it, anything that's higher authority than you that can link to you is going to be very valuable, right? So when you think about how do you start with that, sometimes, especially at a local level, look at local news, community papers, organizations. There's tech titans here, and like places where you might write for them with a backlink. You might sponsor an event. Like think of there's all these creative ways you can actually do something for somebody, and what you really want is a backlink. Sometimes with the conferences, you get a backlink for being a sponsor at any level. So sometimes they will make it so it's no follow. So what they're saying is to Google is that they really don't want to pass on the authority, even though they're linking to you. But I still believe the truth is that obviously Google knows they're linking to you. They're just trying to say that there's something a little bit different, but there's value regardless of that. So you want to look at opportunities and you want to start small and grow from there. The other option is to you linking to other places. Now, I've heard recently that there's some value in that. So I'm linking to Forbes as a resource. So
Oh,
it's not necessarily giving you tons of juice, as what as they say, but there's some value into making sure that you're linking to quality material as well. First of all, you don't want things to break later and then you have broken links, but you also want to link to quality. So as good as that looks, the opposite is just as bad. So when you're linking to spammy sites, anything that may be good, but then it drops, you're going to get negatively impacted as well. So you don't want to have a bunch of bad links coming to your site. So that's why the linking strategy can be tricky, because it used to be just buy links, right? You have all these
yeah.
links, but now it's much more about the quality of those. One of the golden ones is like edu links, .edu, like school institutions, that kind of stuff. So if you ever were a guest speaker at a school or things like that, and you could get a link to your site, that would be really valuable. So some are coveted, you got Wikipedia stuff, all that kind of stuff. And whew, I thought I was going to
You.
sneeze. Oh, it's gone. Is it? Yeah, it's gone.
That's
Sorry.
okay. It's allergy season. We're all
I
dealing
know.
with
I thought I was going to sneeze. But anyway, that's a very valuable one is edu. So, that's it. And I don't know if you get emails where people are like saying, I'll write an article for you. I'll do a guest post. Well,
Yes.
those people want a link from your site to someone else typically. So they have a reason. Sometimes they can be good. Sometimes they can be questionable, but it's really dangerous because you don't know if that content's original. You don't know if it's written by AI. I generally now just decline all of that. But in the past, I've tested things like that, to see, okay, do we want someone to write for us? But we have our own writers and things like that. But so the guest post, just be really careful. And generally, I would say no, but, they're doing it for a reason. They're
And
not
I
just
always
to pay
wondered
for it.
about that.
Yeah, so they're trying to have, like, they've promised someone links, right, somewhere else. That's what they do. And so by writing articles and getting them posted, they're getting links to somewhere else. Not a bad thing, right? Or could be fine, but you just have to make sure it's a good quality.
So, yes, just do your homework.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you trust that source,
Yes.
and then be very careful
Mm-hmm.
about any
Yeah.
backlinks breaking.
Yes.
And
I've bought backlinks before, not often, but I know a lot of people do. I don't do guest posts anymore, but there's all of those kind of things that you can, just have to evaluate as they come. So,
excellent.
yes.
Well, I know I learned a lot from just, doing research to prepare for
Yes.
our
Great. Me
session
too.
today.
Me too. So,
And I appreciate your expertise as always.
ditto. I enjoyed talking about the user experience too a bit. So very nice.
And did you say that you're going to put some links into
Yes. I'll put some questions in there, and then we'll put a couple links to any of the tools we mentioned so people have them.
Okay. All right. And one that I'm going to mention that I thought was a good source too, there's a site called victorious.com.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen
No,
them
but
or
I'm gonna
not.
check it out.
They have a SEO checklist for 2024, and it has a ton of links in it.
Okay. There you go. Well, that says something, right? What the goal
Yes,
is and things like that.
yes, but
Awesome.
it just seemed like it was full of a lot of information from a lot of
Mhm.
different resources in their
Yep.
checklist, and you know how we love checklists around here. So,
All right. Well, great to see you, and I will see you again next week.
yep. Have a good one, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for
Bye-bye.
coming.
Bye.
Bye.